My daughter left me stranded at the airport without a passport. I returned home to a secret account with $7.2 million. I never thought the worst day of my life would become my salvation. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd share. And if you, for just a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. Terminal 4 at JFK Airport was buzzing with activity that March morning. I, Helen Miller, 63 years old, was standing by the American Airlines counter with the old brown leather suitcase I had inherited from my mother. I was wearing my best navy blue dress, the one I saved for special occasions, and my freshly polished black shoes. It had taken me 2 hours to arrange my hair into an elegant bun, because I wanted to look perfect for the family cruise Lucy, my daughter, had organized to celebrate my years of sacrifice. For the first time in decades, I felt important. Special. My heart was fluttering with the excitement of a teenager. After years of looking after Lucy's twins, working as a seamstress late into the night to help her with expenses, cleaning her apartment because she was too busy with her new relationship, we would finally have time for ourselves, to talk, to reconnect as mother and daughter. "Mom, wait for me right here," Lucy told me in that sharp voice she had developed in recent years. "I'm just going to sort out some paperwork at the counter. Don't move from this bench, okay?" I obeyed, as always. I sat on the cold metal bench, clutching my black leather purse to my chest. Inside were my blood pressure pills, a picture of the boys, my mother-of-pearl rosary, and the savings I had scraped together working extra Sundays. $300 for trip expenses. I also had the wool scarf I had knitted during the long winter nights, thinking of the cool sea breeze. Lucy walked away, pulling her sleek roller bag, dressed in a black pantsuit I had paid for last year when she got her job at the consulting firm. Her heels clicked with authority against the marble floor. At 35, my daughter had become a woman who radiated success. But her eyes looked at me with something I couldn't identify then, but which I now recognize as disdain. Minutes passed, then hours. I watched families hurrying to their boarding gates, children pulling on their parents' hands, elderly couples walking slowly but together, executives talking on their phones while dragging ostentatious luggage. The airport was a river of humanity where everyone seemed to have a destination, a purpose. I was still sitting on the same bench. At 11 in the morning, I dialed Lucy's number. Voicemail. At noon, I tried again. Nothing. At 1 in the afternoon, when my stomach was growling with hunger and my legs were beginning to go numb, a flight attendant approached and asked if I needed help. "I'm waiting for my daughter," I told her with a forced smile. "She'll be here any minute." But inside, something cold and heavy was settling in my stomach like a stone. At 2 in the afternoon, my phone vibrated. A text message from Lucy. "Mom, I'm so sorry. It was for the best. You weren't ready for the trip. Dates got complicated. We'll talk when I get back." I read the message 3 times before the words made sense. My hands trembled as I frantically searched my purse. My passport. My passport was gone. I had given it to Lucy that morning when she asked for all the documents to speed up check-in. I had trusted her, just as I had my entire life. The airport floor seemed to shift beneath my feet. The voices around me became a distant hum. An older woman in modest but clean clothes, sitting alone in an international airport, without a passport, without enough money for a cab ride home, without anyone to call. "Are you all right, ma'am?" A kind voice. A young security guard had approached. My daughter left without me," I whispered, the words coming out broken. "I don't have my documents." The young man looked at me with compassion. He'd seen this before, I realized. Broken families, abandoned elders, the ordinary cruelty that hides behind closed doors. For the next 4 hours, kind airport employees helped me contact a car service. The flight attendant, Martha, bought me a sandwich and a coffee with her own money. The guard, Mike, stayed with me until the driver arrived, an older man with sad eyes who didn't charge me the full fare when I told him my story. The ride back to Philadelphia felt endless. Through the car window, I watched the I-95 corridor, the industrial landscapes of New Jersey stretching to the horizon, the suburban towns flashing by under the afternoon sun. Everything was the same as always, but I was no longer the same person who had left that morning full of hope. When I arrived at my house in South Philly at 9 that night, I took out my keys with fingers numb from cold and stress. The key wouldn't go into the lock. I tried again, and again. The lock had been changed. My neighbor, Carol Peterson, came out when she heard my sobs. "Helen, honey, what's wrong?" "Lucy was here this morning with a locksmith. She said you'd gone abroad for a long time and she needed to secure the house." There, standing in front of my own home, the house I had bought with 20 years of working until my fingers ached, the house where I had raised Lucy alone after her father left us, where I had cried my sorrows and celebrated my small joys, I realized the truth I had been denying for years. To my daughter, I wasn't a mother. I was a burden. That night, I slept on a bench in the square by St. Anthony's Church, wrapped in my knitted scarf and using my purse as a pillow. At 63, after a lifetime of honest work, I had become homeless in my own neighborhood. The streetlights cast long shadows on the damp cobblestones, and every noise made me jump. A stray cat came over and curled up by my feet. At least he didn't judge me. Carol woke me at dawn with a cup of coffee and homemade muffins. "Helen, you can't stay out here. Come home with me, at least until we figure this out," she said, her eyes misty, but I needed to understand. I needed to remember how I had gotten here. As I walked the familiar streets of my neighborhood toward the tailor shop where I had worked for 2 decades, memories flooded my mind like a slow-motion film. Every corner, every row house with its geranium-filled window boxes, every smell of city blossoms brought me back to moments I had buried under layers of excuses and blind hope. Lucy was 5 when Anthony, her father, decided we were too much responsibility for his new life as a single man. He left on a Tuesday morning, leaving only a note on the kitchen table. "I'm not cut out for this. Sorry." $20 in an envelope and the cruelest silence I had ever heard. That first night alone, Lucy had cried, asking for Daddy. I held her in our double bed, now too big and cold, and promised through my tears that I would never leave her, that she would always have Mom, that we would get through this together. What a bitter irony. The day after Anthony left, I got a job at Mrs. Gable's tailor shop. 8 hours a day hemming, sewing buttons, mending tears in school uniforms and First Communion dresses. My fingers learned to move with millimeter precision, every stitch perfect, every motion automated until it became a silent music. Lucy grew up beautiful, but rebellious. By 13, she was already screaming that she hated me, that it was my fault we lived in this dump, that all her friends had mothers with important jobs and fathers who took them on vacation. I sewed until 2 in the morning to pay for her English tutoring, piano lessons, ballet classes. I wanted to give her everything I never had. "You're a failure! That's why Dad left!" She had screamed at me one afternoon when I told her I couldn't buy her the brand-name sneakers all her classmates wore. That night, I cried in silence as I repaired a wedding gown, each tear falling on the white silk like a stain of defeat. At 16, Lucy was ashamed for me to pick her up from high school. She would wait a block away so her friends wouldn't see my simple clothes, my hands calloused from the needles, my face tired from working double shifts. "Mom, can't you dress up a little? You look old," she would say with the casual cruelty of a teenager. But I kept making excuses for her. "It's just her age," I'd tell myself. "She'll grow out of it." When she turned 18, Lucy announced she was moving to New York City to study business at NYU. I had saved for 3 years, tucking every dollar into a cookie tin hidden behind the canned goods. $5,000. All my money. "It's my future, Mom. It's the least you can do after everything you haven't given me," she said, as she counted the bills on my kitchen table. College, the apartment, expenses, luxuries. I paid for it all. When she graduated, she didn't even invite me to the ceremony. "You just wouldn't get it, Mom. It's a very sophisticated atmosphere." Lucy came back to Philly a polished woman, with a more refined accent and very clear ideas about what she deserved from life. She got a job at a consulting firm downtown, rented an apartment in one of the new, trendy neighborhoods, and started dating men who drove expensive cars. I kept sewing, now with tired eyes and arthritic hands, but happy that my daughter had made it. At 28, Lucy showed up at my door one rainy night. She was crying hysterically. "Mom, I'm pregnant." Mark left me. I don't know what to do. I held her like I did when she was a little girl. I made her favorite hot chocolate. I stroked her hair the way I used to before she grew up and pushed me away. "It's okay, my sweet girl. This is your home. Always." Mark had been her great love, a married bank executive who had promised to get a divorce. The promises evaporated as soon as he heard about the pregnancy. Lucy moved back into my small row house, into my poor world, because she had no other options. The twins, Dylan and Parker, were born on a rainy April day. When I saw them for the first time, so small and perfect, my heart broke with love. They were my grandsons, my second chance to love without limits. Lucy could barely get out of bed for the first few weeks. Postpartum depression had turned her into a shadow. I took over everything. The late-night feedings, the diapers, the sleepless nights when they had fevers, the trips to the pediatrician. I worked half days at the shop and spent the rest of my time as a nanny, cook, and laundress. My savings vanished on diapers, formula, baby clothes, medicine. I took out a loan to buy 2 cribs, a double stroller, everything my grandsons needed. "Mom, thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you," Lucy would say through exhausted tears. For the first time in years, I felt useful, needed, loved. When the boys turned 2, Lucy met Robert at a work conference. He was divorced, had a good salary, and a house in the suburbs with a yard. They got married 6 months later in an intimate ceremony where I wasn't allowed to invite anyone because it was a very private affair. "The boys and I are moving in with Robert, Mom. It's time for you to get a life," she announced while packing. "What about me? Who's going to watch the boys when you work late?" I asked, feeling my world collapse. "We'll hire a nanny. Robert says it's for the best." They took my grandsons on a gray October Tuesday. The house fell silent, the empty cribs staring at me like open mouths waiting to be filled. I cried for days. But Lucy came back. She always came back when she needed something. "Mom, can you watch the boys this weekend? Robert and I need some time alone." "Mom, I got laid off. Could you help me with the mortgage this month?" "Mom, Robert says I need some space. Can we stay with you for a few weeks?" And I always said yes. Always. Because I believed that unconditional love meant setting no boundaries, asking no questions, never saying no. Robert got tired of Lucy's problems and filed for divorce when the twins were 8. She came back to my house, this time with 2 boys who no longer remembered me as the grandmother who had raised them, but as the old lady who lived in a small, old-fashioned house. For 5 more years, I lived for them. I took the boys to school, picked them up, made them snacks, and supervised their homework while Lucy was looking for work or taking courses she never finished. I worked until I was 60, my hands deformed by arthritis, to support 4 people. Lucy always found excuses not to contribute financially. "Mom, you know I barely make anything at the office. Besides, you have your Social Security. My Social Security. $800 a month after 40 years of work. $800 that went to food, clothes for the boys, school expenses, utility bills. The day I turned 60, Lucy forgot completely. She came home late without an apology, and when I reminded her it was my birthday, she just said, "Oh, Mom, sorry. I've had a terrible day. We'll celebrate some other time." We never did. But I kept waiting. I kept believing that one day Lucy would wake up and see everything I had done for her, that she would say the words I had been waiting decades to hear. "Thank you, Mom. I love you." Now, walking the streets of my neighborhood like a stranger in my own land, I wondered when I had stopped being a mother and become a slave paying for the privilege of being mistreated. The days following the abandonment at the airport blurred into a fog of humiliation and dull pain. Carol had taken me in, letting me sleep on her sofa, but I felt like a broken piece of furniture someone keeps in the attic out of pity. For the first few nights, I would wake up thinking it had all been a horrible nightmare, until reality hit me like an icy fist. My own daughter had betrayed me in the most cruel way imaginable. The phone didn't ring. Lucy didn't call to explain. to apologize, not even to insult me. The silence was worse than any shouting. It was as if I had died to her. One morning, while Carol was making a ham and cheese omelet, I received a call that brought me back to reality with surgical brutality. Mrs. Helen Miller? This is Javier Ruiz from the Mendoza and Associates law firm. I'm calling on behalf of your daughter, Lucy Miller. My heart sped up. Had Lucy had a change of heart? Was she coming to get me? Ma'am, she has requested that I inform you she will be proceeding with the sale of the property located at 47 Bettis Street. As you are not listed as the owner on the deed, you must vacate the premises within 15 days. The words stabbed into my brain like knives. My house. The house I had bought with my own hands, brick by brick, working 16-hour days for years. The house where I had raised Lucy alone, where I had sewn until my fingers bled to pay for her college, where I had cared for my grandsons as if they were my own sons. I'm sorry. What do you mean I'm not listed as the owner? I bought that house in 1987, I whispered, my voice breaking. According to our records, the property was legally transferred to Lucy Miller's name 3 years ago, when you signed the power of attorney. Do you recall signing any documents? Yes, I remembered. Lucy had come over with papers, saying it was to speed up some bureaucratic stuff related to a non-existent inheritance from a distant aunt. She had explained it to me with condescending patience, as if I were a simple child, that it was better to put the house in her name to avoid problems with the IRS when I passed away. It's just paperwork, Mom, to protect you, so you don't have any trouble. And I had signed. Blind with trust, I signed my own death sentence. Ma'am, are you still there? The lawyer's voice brought me back to the present. Yes, I'm here. I'm very sorry for the situation. If you need legal advice, I can recommend some colleagues who work on a reduced fee basis. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Carol, who had heard the entire conversation from the kitchen, came over, wiping her hands on her apron. Helen, my dear, that girl has no soul. That afternoon, gathering my courage, I dialed Lucy's number for the first time since the airport. After 5 rings, she answered with a cold professional voice. Yes? Lucy, it's Mom. A long silence, as if she were deciding whether to hang up. What do you want? Honey, we need to talk. About the house. About what happened at the airport. I don't understand. Mom? It was necessary. You don't see it, but you're getting strange, senile. The other day I saw you talking to yourself at the market. My boyfriend Paul is a psychologist, and he explained to me that at your age, it's normal for mental issues to start. Paul, a new boyfriend I knew nothing about. Strange, senile. Lucy, I'm perfectly fine. No, Mom, you're not well. That's why I canceled the trip. I couldn't take you in that condition. Can you imagine the embarrassment if you'd had one of your episodes in front of other people? Episodes? What was she talking about? And the house, Mom. The house is better off in my hands. I'm going to sell it to finance my new business. Paul has important contacts. We're going to open a consulting agency. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But Lucy, that house, it's my whole life. I worked for 40 years to pay for it. It's all I have. Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic. You can stay in a home. There are some really nice ones, with staff specialized for people with your problems. The word home sounded like a tombstone falling on my grave. Problems? What problems, Lucy? I took care of you. I took care of your children. I worked until my health was ruined to give you everything. Exactly, Mom. That's the problem. You've always been obsessive with me. Possessive. Paul says it's a form of psychological abuse. The way you make me feel guilty for everything. I need space to heal. I couldn't breathe. Psychological abuse. Me, who had given my entire life for her. The boys. Can I at least see Dylan and Parker? The children are better off without your negative influence. They've started therapy to overcome all the damage you've done with your toxic behavior. Damage. Toxic. Lucy's words plunged into my chest like poisoned daggers. Lucy, please. Mom, I have to go. Paul and I have an important dinner. Oh, and before I forget, I've changed the locks for security. If you try to enter the house, I'll call the police. The phone went dead in my hand. That night, while Carol snored softly in her bedroom, I lay awake on the sofa, staring at the ceiling beams. Every word from Lucy echoed in my head like a malevolent chant. Could it be true? Was I really losing my mind? Had I been a toxic mother without knowing it? I reviewed every moment, every sacrifice, every sleepless night caring for her sick children. I remembered the times I had worked with a 104-degree fever, so I wouldn't lose the day's wages that would pay for her whims. The times I had eaten only bread so she could have meat on her plate. No, I wasn't crazy. I knew exactly what had happened. The next day, something inside me shattered when I went to pick up my personal belongings from the house. Lucy had left a cardboard box on the stoop, as if it were trash someone puts out on the curb. Inside were my photo album, my portable sewing machine, some clothes, and my medications. At the bottom of the box, I found a note written in Lucy's elegant script. "Mom, I've donated the rest of your things to Goodwill. I thought it was for the best. I hope you find the professional help you need." Lucy. She hadn't even signed it, "Your daughter," or "With love," just Lucy, as if from a stranger. Carol found me crying silently over that pathetic box. "Helen, that girl isn't worth another one of your tears." But the tears kept falling. Not for the house, not for the material things. I was crying for the 40 years of unconditional love that had evaporated like smoke. For the mother I had been, who had apparently never existed in my daughter's mind. For the grandsons who now saw me as a dangerous stranger. That night, for the first time in my life, I wondered if Lucy was right about one thing, if there really was something wrong with me, if there was something intrinsically flawed in a woman who had given everything and received only contempt in return. I opened my photo album with trembling hands. There was baby Lucy, smiling at me with those toothless gums. Lucy on her first day of school, clutching my hand tightly. Lucy at her college graduation, where I had been absent because I didn't fit in. The newborn twins, so tiny in my wrinkled arms. When had it stopped being love and become toxic behavior? At what point had my sacrifice turned into manipulation? I closed the album and put it back at the bottom of the box. For the first time in 63 years, I wondered who Helen Miller was when nobody needed anything from her. The answer terrified me. I had no idea. 3 days after that devastating conversation, Carol's doorbell rang insistently at 7 in the morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard familiar voices on the porch. My heart leaped. It was Dylan and Parker, my grandsons, accompanied by a young woman with a severe expression whom I didn't recognize. "Grandma Helen, are you there?" Dylan's voice, now 13, sounded strange, more formal than usual. I ran to the door with a smile that hurt my cheeks. I hadn't seen them in weeks. When I opened it, their faces took my breath away. They looked at me with a mixture of pity and caution, as if I were a wounded animal that might attack at any moment. "Hello, my boys," I whispered, opening my arms. Parker, the younger one, instinctively stepped back. Dylan stood frozen, not returning the hug. "Mrs. Miller," the unknown woman intervened in a professional tone. "I'm Karen Wallace, a social worker. I'm here with the children because they've expressed a desire to speak with you." "A social worker? The children? Since when did my grandsons need an official escort to see me?" "Grandma," Dylan spoke, his voice cracking like a teenager who had rehearsed these words. "Mom explained what's happening, that you have problems, that you're not right in the head." "Problems? But Dylan, my love, I'm perfectly fine. What has your mother told you?" The social worker watched me, taking notes in a small pad. Parker clung to his older brother's hand as if I were a dangerous stranger. "She told us you have an illness that makes you forget things and get violent," Dylan continued, avoiding my gaze. "That's why she left you at the airport. To protect us." The words hit me like slaps. Violent? In my entire life, I had never raised a hand to anyone, let alone my grandsons. "Dylan, Parker, that's not true. I would never, ever hurt you. You are what I love most in this world." "Grandma, is it true that you sometimes talk to yourself?" Parker asked with the cruel innocence of a child. "Mom says it's a symptom. Talk to myself? Yes. Sometimes I muttered while sewing or cooking. Like millions of older people all over the world. Like my own mother used to. But Lucy had twisted that normality into evidence of insanity. Sometimes people talk to themselves when they're doing chores, sweetie. Like when you sing while you're playing video games. It doesn't mean I'm sick. The social worker interjected, Mrs. Miller, I understand this is a difficult situation, but the minors have stated they feel uncomfortable with some of your behaviors. They've recounted episodes of excessive crying, overly long hugs, and comments about their deceased grandfather that they find disturbing. Excessive crying? I had cried the day they had a birthday party and didn't invite me. Overly long hugs? I hugged them like I had hugged Lucy, with all the love I had. Comments about their grandfather? I had told them nice stories about Anthony, trying to let them know something positive about their heritage. Everything I had done out of love had been reinterpreted as symptoms of a mental imbalance. Furthermore, the woman continued, your daughter has informed us of irresponsible financial behavior. Apparently, you've been spending money compulsively and have lost important documents. Irresponsible financial behavior? The only irresponsible spending had been on gifts for the boys, the expensive toys Lucy couldn't afford but that I bought by working overtime. The documents had been lost by her, after she manipulated me into giving them to her. Dylan looked at me with eyes that were no longer my grandson's, but those of a compassionate stranger. Grandma, we just want you to get well. Mom says there are places that can help you. Places? I asked, though I already knew the answer. A specialized residence, the social worker confirmed, with medical staff trained to treat your condition. My condition, as if loving too much were a diagnosable disease. I don't want to go to any home, I said with the firmest voice I could muster. I'm not sick. This is my daughter's revenge because… Grandma, Dylan interrupted me. Please, don't say bad things about Mom. She only wants what's best for you. There it was. Lucy had done her job perfectly. She had turned my own grandsons into her allies, convincing them that I was the problem, that she was the victim of my sick love. Parker came over timidly and gave me a quick, mechanical hug. We love you, Grandma, but you have to get better. After they left, I sat motionless on Carol's sofa for hours. The old woman brought me chamomile tea and sat beside me in silence, respecting my grief. Helen, she finally said, that girl is the devil with an angel's face. But I couldn't accept it yet. A part of me was still searching for excuses, justifications. Maybe Lucy really believed I was sick. Maybe she had misinterpreted my behavior. Maybe if I apologized, if I agreed to see a doctor to prove I was sane, we could fix things. That night, I called Lucy one more time. What do you want now? Her voice was exasperated. Lucy, honey, I've been thinking. If you believe I need medical help, I'm willing to go. But please, don't keep the boys from me. They're my life. A long sigh on the other end of the line. Mom, it's too late for that. The boys have already decided. They don't want to see you until you're better. But I can get better. I can change whatever is necessary. It's not that simple. Paul, my boyfriend, says that people like you rarely ever really change. That it's better to make a clean break. Paul. Always Paul. A man I had never seen was dictating the future of my relationship with my own family. Can I at least meet Paul? Talk to him? Explain? No. Paul prefers to stay out of this whole situation. He finds it very stressful. He finds it stressful. A stranger who had appeared in our lives a few months ago had more decision-making power over my future than I did. Lucy, please. I'm your mother. Exactly, Mom. You're my mother. And as your daughter, I have a responsibility to protect you from yourself. Protect me from myself. The cruelest phrase I had ever heard. I've contacted the Clara's Garden residence. It's very nice. They have pretty gardens and activities for people your age. You can do crafts, play cards. I don't want to play cards, Lucy. I want to be with my family. That obsessive mentality is exactly the problem, Mom. A healthy person your age should have their own interests, their own friends, not live for others. Living for others. That had been my cardinal sin. Loving too intensely, giving too generously, sacrificing too often. And what if I don't want to go? Mom, don't make this any harder than it already is. I have all the necessary legal documentation. The power of attorney you signed allows me to make decisions about your well-being. That damned power of attorney again. The perfect trap I had fallen into out of blind trust. An ambulance will come to pick you up tomorrow. It's all arranged. An ambulance. As if I were actually mentally ill. It's protocol, Mom. Don't be so dramatic. When she hung up, I was left holding the phone, feeling the last chance to be myself slipping away. Helen Miller, the seamstress, the mother, the grandmother, was dying. In her place, Helen Miller, the patient, the invalid, the social burden, was being born. Carol found me packing my few belongings into a small suitcase. "What are you doing, Helen? They're coming for me tomorrow, to take me to a home, and you're just going to let them do that to you?" The question stopped me. Was I going to allow it? For 63 years, I had allowed others to make decisions for me. First Anthony, choosing to abandon us. Then Lucy, choosing how to spend my money, where to live, when to see my grandsons, what to think of myself. But something small and hard was forming in my chest. A seed of rebellion that had lain dormant for decades. I don't know, Carol. I don't know anything anymore. That night, listening to the city sounds of Philadelphia filtering through the window, I made a decision that would change the rest of my life. I would not get into that ambulance. It was time to find out who Helen Miller was when no one else was deciding for her. At 6 the next morning, I rose from Carol's sofa with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in decades, I didn't wake up wondering what Lucy would need from me that day. I didn't have to plan meals for ungrateful children, or worry about bills I couldn't pay, or endure contempt disguised as concern. I dressed in my best outfit, the navy blue dress I had worn to the airport, and combed my hair carefully. If I was going to face the world alone for the first time in my life, I would do it with dignity. "Helen, are you sure about this?" Carol asked as she watched me put my documents in my purse. "They could look for you, force you." "Carol, I'm 63 years old. I'm not a child or a madwoman. If I haven't committed a crime, no one can force me to go where I don't want to go." The words came out of my mouth with a firmness that surprised me. For years, I had spoken in the quiet, submissive voice of someone who is always apologizing for existing. But that morning, my voice sounded different. It sounded like a woman who had just remembered she had rights. At 8 o'clock sharp, just as Lucy had promised, the siren of an ambulance grew louder as it approached. From Carol's window, I watched it stop in front of my old house. 2 paramedics got out, followed by a woman in a white coat who looked like a doctor, and, to my horror, the social worker from the previous day. They waited. They rang the bell. They knocked on the door. Finally, one of the paramedics took out his phone and dialed a number. I could imagine the conversation. "Ms. Miller, we've arrived to pick up your mother, but she's not at the address you gave us." From my hiding place, I saw Lucy arrive in a cab. She got out nervously, phone pressed to her ear, gesticulating wildly. She was wearing an elegant black suit, as if she were going to a funeral. Perhaps, in her twisted mind, she was. The funeral of the mother she had decided to bury alive. I watched them talk amongst themselves for several minutes. Lucy pointed in different directions, obviously suggesting where I might be. At one point, I saw her look directly at the window where I was hiding. Our eyes met for an eternal second. I saw something in her face that chilled my blood. Not worry or hurt love, but cold irritation, like someone who has misplaced a valuable object needed to complete a transaction. After half an hour of fruitless searching, the medical team left. Lucy lingered for a few more minutes, pacing the street, looking up at the neighbors' windows with a calculating expression. Finally, she too left, but not before making a call that lasted several minutes. "It's done," I whispered to myself. "There's no going back." Carol served me coffee and muffins, but I could barely swallow. It wasn't fear I felt, but something stranger, a mix of terror and euphoria, as if I had just jumped off a cliff without knowing if I had wings to fly. "So what are you going to do now?" the old woman asked. "I don't know. For the first time in my life, I have no idea what I'm going to do tomorrow." And it was liberating. Terrifying, but liberating. That afternoon, while Carol was taking a nap, I decided to walk through Philadelphia in a way I hadn't in years. I was in no hurry. I didn't have to be anywhere at any time. I walked through the historic streets of Old City, sat on a bench in Rittenhouse Square, and watched the tourists taking pictures. A Japanese couple asked me to take a photo of them. As I focused the camera, they hugged and smiled, and something in my chest tore. When was the last time someone had wanted to be in a picture with me? When was the last time someone had truly hugged me, not out of obligation or pity? I handed back their camera, and they thanked me in broken English. The woman offered me a piece of candy from her country and asked if I had children. Yes, I answered automatically. A daughter. Does she live here in Philly? I was silent for a moment. How could I explain that my daughter lived 15 minutes away, but that to her I was already dead? No, I finally said. She lives very far away. It was true, in a way. The emotional distance was vaster than any ocean. That night, on Carol's sofa, I made the decision that would change everything. I pulled from my purse a wrinkled business card I had saved for months, an attorney near the Italian market, an older man I had seen working on complicated inheritance cases. The next day, without telling anyone, I walked into his office. Mr. Goldstein, I need help. My daughter stole my house using a power of attorney that I signed without really understanding what it was. Arthur Goldstein was 70, with a perfectly trimmed white beard and the kindest blue eyes I had ever seen. He listened to my entire story without interrupting, occasionally taking notes on a yellow legal pad. Helen, he said when I finished, what your daughter has done to you is technically legal but morally repugnant. The power of attorney you signed is very broad. It gives her control over all your financial and medical decisions. Is there nothing I can do? There are a few options. We can try to prove that you signed the document under duress or without a full understanding of its consequences. We can also request an independent psychological evaluation to prove you are of sound mind. How long will it take? Months, maybe years. And it will be expensive. I don't have any money, Mr. Goldstein. I have nothing. The lawyer looked at me with compassion. Helen, I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to take your case pro bono, free of charge. I have a daughter about your age, and if someone did this to her, well, let's just say I understand your situation. For the first time in weeks, I cried tears not of pain, but of relief. Someone believed me. Someone was helping me without asking for anything in return. I left the lawyer's office feeling different. Not stronger, exactly, but more real. More in charge of my own destiny. That afternoon, I decided to do something I hadn't done in decades. I walked into an elegant cafe downtown and ordered a latte and a slice of cheesecake. Not because I needed it, not because it was sensible with my limited budget, but simply because I felt like it. I sat by the window and watched people pass by. Executives in a hurry, young mothers pushing strollers, students with backpacks full of books. They all had complicated lives, problems, joys, dreams. They were all the protagonists of their own stories. For the first time in my life, so was I. The coffee was delicious. The cake, perfect. And I, sitting there alone, enjoying a small luxury without having to justify it to anyone, felt freer than I ever had before. When I left the cafe, the sun was setting over the Philly rooftops, painting the sky orange and pink. It had been years since I had stopped to watch a sunset. I had always been too busy sewing, cleaning, cooking, solving other people's problems. I took out my cell phone, the basic model Lucy always criticized as ancient, and dialed her number one last time. She answered on the second ring. Mom? Where have you been? I had to cancel the admission to the home. You made me look bad. Her voice dripped with irritation, not concern. Lucy, I said, with a calm that surprised me. I am not going into any home. Mom, don't be ridiculous. You can't live on your own? You don't have a house? You don't have any money? You're right about one thing. I don't have a house because you stole it from me, but I have a lawyer, and we are going to get it back. A tense silence on the other end of the line. A lawyer? Mom, you don't have money for lawyers. There are good people in the world, Lucy. People who help without asking for anything in return. I know that's a difficult concept for you to understand. Mom, you're making a mistake. Paul says this rebellious behavior is typical of your condition. Paul. Always Paul. The invisible man who managed my life like a puppeteer. Lucy, I want you to tell Paul something for me. He can go to hell, and you can go with him. I hung up the phone. And for the first time in 63 years, I laughed out loud in the middle of the street, not caring that people were staring. Helen Miller had just been born. 2 weeks after my liberating phone call, Lucy descended on Carol's house like a furious storm. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was helping my neighbor make meatballs for dinner when we heard violent pounding on the door. "Mom, I know you're in there. Open this door right now." Lucy's voice cut through the wood like knives. Carol looked at me with concern, but I wiped my hands on my apron with a surprising sense of calm. "Let her yell," I told her. "She doesn't scare me anymore." The pounding continued, louder, more desperate. "Helen Miller, if you don't open up, I'm calling the police." "Go ahead and call them," I shouted back. "Let's see what you tell them. That your mother doesn't want to see you." A tense silence fell. Then, the doorbell began to ring intermittently, insistently. Finally, I pulled the door open. Lucy was there, but she wasn't the elegant, controlled woman I had known my whole life. Her dyed blonde hair was disheveled, she was wearing the same wrinkled and stained clothes from the day before, and her eyes held a wild desperation I had never seen. Behind her stood Paul. I recognized him immediately, even though it was the first time I'd seen him in person. He was in his early 40s, tall, handsome in that artificial way that comes from expensive gyms and men's grooming products. He wore an impeccable gray suit and studied me with the clinical coldness of someone evaluating an interesting specimen. "Hi, Mom," Lucy said with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I brought someone special. Paul wanted to finally meet you." Paul stepped forward with his hand outstretched. "Mrs. Miller, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Lucy has told me so much about you." His voice was smooth, polite, but something in his eyes made my skin crawl. A constant evaluation, as if he were calculating my market value. "I can imagine what she's told you," I replied, not taking his hand. "That I'm crazy, that I'm a burden, that I need to be locked up." Paul's smile didn't waver. "Not at all. Lucy is very concerned about your well-being. That's why we're here." "Can we come in?" Lucy intervened. "There are important things we need to discuss." Carol appeared behind me like a small army of support. "This is my house," she said firmly. "And Helen is my guest. If you want to talk to her, it will be here, in the living room, with the door open." We sat in Carol's small living room, with its collection of figurines on the shelves and the scent of beeswax that permeated the antique furniture. Lucy and Paul took the sofa. I sat in the wingback chair that was my hostess's favorite. "Mom," Lucy began in that syrupy voice she used when she wanted something, "we came because we miss you so much. The boys ask about you constantly." It was a lie, and I knew it. But a small, wounded part of my heart clung to the possibility. "Do they really ask about me?" "Of course," Paul interjected. "In fact, they've asked us to invite you to dinner tomorrow. A family get-together to clear up any misunderstandings." Misunderstandings? Is that what they were calling abandonment, theft, and humiliation now? "They weren't misunderstandings," I said clearly. "Lucy abandoned me at an airport without my documents, stole my house, and tried to have me committed to a home. Those aren't misunderstandings. They're crimes." Paul's mask slipped for just a second, revealing something cold and calculating. "Mrs. Miller, I understand you feel upset, but Lucy was acting with your safety in mind. Your episodes were becoming more and more frequent." "What episodes? Describe just one." Paul looked to Lucy for support. She shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. "Mom, the other day I saw you at the market talking to yourself. You were telling things to a picture of Dad. I had his picture in my purse and took it out for a moment. Sometimes I talk to him, yes. The way people talk to their loved ones' graves. Is that crazy?" "Mrs. Miller," Paul adopted his most professional tone. "As a psychologist, I can assure you that there are patterns of behavior that—" "You're a psychologist?" I interrupted him. "Where did you study? Where do you work? Do you have a practice?" The question caught him off guard. He stammered something about studying abroad, freelance work, online therapy. "I see. A psychologist with no degree, no office, no real patients, but with enough authority to diagnose insanity from a distance." Lucy shot to her feet abruptly. "That's enough, Mom. You always do this. You attack the people I care about." "I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just asking questions any sane person would ask." "There it is!" Lucy shouted, pointing at me. "That aggression, that paranoia. Don't you see it, Paul? Paul nodded with a grave expression. It's typical of cognitive decline. Hostility towards authority figures, denial of reality. Authority? I stood up as well. You are no authority in my life. You're a stranger who showed up a few months ago and now presumes to decide my fate. Mom, Paul loves me. We're getting married. He's going to be part of our family. Our family? What family, Lucy? You threw me out of your life. You stole my house. You took my grandsons away from me. You tried to lock me up. What family are you talking about? Paul approached me, hands outstretched in a gesture that was meant to be calming. Mrs. Miller, I understand your confusion, but you have to understand that Lucy only wants what's best for you. We've found an excellent home, with gardens, activities. I already told you, I'm not going to any home. That's not a decision you can make on your own, Paul said with a condescending smile. Lucy has the legal power to— That power is going to be nullified, I cut him off. I have a lawyer. For the first time since they arrived, I saw real fear in Lucy's eyes. A lawyer? Mom, you don't have the money for lawyers. There are good people in this world, honey. People who help without asking for anything in return. Paul and Lucy exchanged a quick, tense glance. Look, Mom, Lucy changed tactics. I get that you're angry. Maybe I didn't handle the airport situation well. But it's done. Now we have to think about the future. My future or yours? They're connected, Paul interjected. Lucy needs peace of mind to develop her new business project. She can't be constantly worried about me. Say it. Her mother is an obstacle to her plans. Nobody said that, Lucy protested weakly. You don't have to say it. It's in every gesture, every word. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtains. The afternoon sun lit up the street where I had grown up, where I had been happy before I became a slave to others' needs. Do you know what I've discovered these past few weeks? I said without turning around. That I'm stronger than I thought. That I can live alone, make my own decisions, be happy without depending on anyone. Mom, that's not realistic at your age, Lucy said with growing desperation. You need care, medical supervision, like the care you've given me for 40 years? By stealing my house? By keeping my grandsons from me? By trying to lock me up? Paul approached again, but this time he had dropped the friendly mask. Ma'am, you are being highly unreasonable. Lucy has sacrificed for you for years. The laugh that escaped my throat surprised everyone, including me. Sacrificed? Lucy sacrificed? Son, I think you've got the story backwards. I turned to face them with a clarity that shone like glass. It's over. I am not going to justify my existence to anyone ever again. I'm not going to apologize for loving too much, for giving too much, for being too much. And I am certainly not going to let you lock me away like an old animal that's no longer useful. Mom, Lucy started to cry, but they were tears of manipulation, not real pain. Please think about the children. They need stability, not to see their grandmother behaving like this. The children are better off without your toxicity. When they're older, if they want to know the truth, they'll know where to find me. Paul stood up abruptly. This is useless. She's clearly having a psychotic episode. Lucy, I think we'll have to use other methods. What methods? I asked with genuine curiosity. We have witnesses to her erratic behavior. Medical documentation. We can petition for an involuntary commitment. He had finally said the truth. He had finally shown his hand. Try it, I told him with a smile. But I'm warning you about one thing. I'm not the scared woman I was a month ago. Now I have a voice, I have legal support, and I have something you will never understand. And what's that? Dignity. I threw them out of Carol's house that afternoon. I watched them walk down the street, Lucy crying hysterically, Paul talking on the phone with aggressive gestures. That night, as I ate the meatballs we finished making after they left, I realized something extraordinary. For the first time in my life, I had won a battle, and I had no intention of losing the war. 3 months after that liberating confrontation, my life had changed in ways I never would have imagined possible. Mr. Goldstein, my lawyer, had successfully nullified the power of attorney by arguing undue influence, and while the legal process to recover my house was still ongoing, I had found something far more valuable: my own voice. I had rented a small apartment in a nearby neighborhood, a second-floor unit with a balcony overlooking the street and enough light for my new sewing machine. Yes, I had started sewing again, but now I did it for myself, not for survival, but for the sheer pleasure of creating something beautiful with my own hands. That June morning, as I was making my breakfast and listening to the radio program that had become my favorite companion, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I found the last person I ever expected to see, Dylan, my older grandson. He was just standing there, newly 14, taller than I remembered, a backpack slung over one shoulder and his eyes full of unshed tears. "Grandma?" His voice broke. "Can I come in?" I hugged him without asking any questions, feeling his tense body relax against mine. He was taller than me now, but he was still my grandson, the baby I had cared for since his first days. "Always, my love. You can always come here." I made hot chocolate while he sat in my small kitchen, looking at everything with curiosity. My apartment was modest but cozy, filled with plants I had started collecting and the colorful pillows I sewed in my free time. "Mom says you're sick," he said finally, "that you went crazy, and that's why we can't see you. What do you think, Dylan?" He looked at me with those intelligent eyes he'd always had. "I think Mom has been lying a lot lately." I served him the hot chocolate with some cookies I'd bought at the bakery on the corner. Expensive cookies, the good kind, because now I could afford little luxuries without feeling guilty. "Tell me what's been happening these last few months." Dylan sighed like a tired adult. "Paul moved in. He sleeps in your old room now, in your bed. He's changed everything. He threw out your pictures, your things. He says memories of the past are toxic for Mom." I felt a pang, but not of pain, of controlled rage. "And how are you with all this?" "I hate him, Grandma. Paul yells at us for everything. He says we're spoiled, that Mom let us get away with too much. Now we have to ask his permission just to go to the bathroom at night." My grandson, my little Dylan, lowered his head in shame. "And Mom's different. She used to take our side when someone told us off. Now she agrees with everything Paul says. The other day, she hit me because Paul said I had disrespected him." "She hit you?" Dylan lifted his shirt and showed me a yellowish bruise on his ribs. "It was with Paul's belt. Mom says it's for my own good, that I need masculine discipline because I don't have a father." I had to grip the edge of the table to keep from shaking with fury. My Lucy, who had grown up without violence, who knew what it was like to grow up without a father, was now allowing a stranger to abuse her children. "Dylan, why did you come here today?" "Because I can't take it anymore. And because—" he hesitated. "Because I found something." He pulled a cell phone from his backpack that I recognized immediately. It was Lucy's. She left it at home yesterday, and she had her messages open. He showed me the screen. Text message conversations between Lucy and Paul that chilled my blood. "Did you sign the papers for the house sale yet?" "Yeah, the deal closes tomorrow. $280,000 clear." "Perfect. With that and my ex-wife's inheritance, we can move to Costa Rica like we planned. And the boys? We'll put them in a boarding school. Problem solved. What if my mother makes legal trouble? A woman her age, with a psychiatric history we're going to create. No one will believe her." There were more messages, worse ones. Paul talking about how he had manipulated other older women, how it was easy to convince lonely widows they needed a man's help. "Grandma," Dylan was crying openly now, "they're going to send us away. They're going to steal all the money and leave without us." I hugged him tightly, feeling my heart break and rebuild itself, stronger this time. "They are not sending you anywhere. I promise you that." That same afternoon, I called Mr. Goldstein and showed him the messages. His expression hardened with every line he read. "Helen, this is pure gold. We have documented proof of fraud, conspiracy, and child endangerment. With this, you not only get your house back, but you can petition for temporary custody of the boys." "Custody? At my age? You're 63, not 90. And you're of sound mind. Besides, a judge will always prefer a competent relative over the foster care system." 2 days later, while Lucy and Paul thought everything was going according to their plan, the police arrived at my old house with a search warrant. They found forged documents, fraudulent sales contracts, and most importantly, a search history on Paul's computer, where he had looked up how to fake senile dementia and cheap homes for difficult seniors. The arrest was swift and quiet. The neighbors came out onto their porches when they saw the police cars, but I wasn't there to see Lucy's humiliation. I was at home, preparing the bedrooms for Dylan and Parker, my other grandson. That night, as my grandson slept for the first time in months without fear, I sat on my balcony with a glass of red wine, a luxury I had forbidden myself for decades, considering it unnecessary. The wine tasted like freedom. Mr. Goldstein had explained the process. Lucy was facing charges for fraud and child endangerment. Paul, with several similar cases in his past that the police had uncovered, would be in prison for several years. The house would be returned to my name, and I would have temporary custody of the boys until Lucy could prove she was a competent mother. What if she changes? What if she gets help? I had asked him. Helen, that will be her choice, but it will no longer be your problem to solve for her. Over the following weeks, I discovered the joy of raising children without the weight of manipulation and emotional blackmail. Dylan and Parker were normal kids when they weren't living in a toxic environment. They got into mischief, argued with each other, asked for money for candy, and complained about chores. It was wonderful. One day Parker, the younger one, asked me while we were doing homework, "Grandma, why was Mom so mean to you?" It was a question I had asked myself 1,000 times. How do you explain the complexity of emotional abuse, greed, and manipulation to an 11-year-old? Sometimes people get lost, sweetie. They make bad decisions that take them far away from what really matters. Like us? Like family. Like real love. Do you think Mom will find herself again? I looked at my grandson, his eyes full of wounded hope, and gave him the only honest answer I had. I don't know, Parker, but we are going to be okay no matter what she decides. And it was true. For the first time in my life, I was whole without needing anyone else to validate me, need me, or love me back. That night, after tucking the boys in, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me had whiter hair, more pronounced wrinkles, but her eyes shone with a light I hadn't seen in decades. It was the look of someone who had saved herself. I put on the silk nightgown I had bought myself the week before. Another small luxury I would have once considered an unforgivable vanity, and got into my own bed, in my own reclaimed house, surrounded by the quiet peace of a life finally my own. For the first time in 63 years, I was completely free, and it was beautiful. 6 months after reclaiming my house and my life, I wake up every morning with a feeling it took me 63 years to recognize. The peace of knowing the day ahead belongs entirely to me. It's a December morning in Philadelphia, one of those crisp days that smells of cold air and fresh coffee. Dylan and Parker left for school early. Yes, they walk by themselves now, because unlike their mother, I trust them to be capable of looking after themselves. The house is quiet, but it's a different kind of quiet from the one I knew for so many years. It's not the emptiness of someone waiting for others to fill their existence, but the fullness of someone who has learned to be her own best company. I make my favorite breakfast, toast with fresh jam from the farmer's market, and a pinch of sea salt. A simple but perfect breakfast, one I ate for decades without really enjoying it, because I was always thinking about what everyone else needed. Now, I savor every bite as if it were the first. While I eat, I check my bank account on my new smartphone. Mr. Goldstein taught me how to use the banking app, and it still surprises me to see the number, 7.2 million. The inheritance from Mr. Ernest Gable, the elderly man I cared for 23 years ago when I worked cleaning houses in the afternoons after my shift at the tailor shop. The letter I found among my old papers explained everything. Mr. Gable had died with no family, and in his will, he had made it clear that I was the only person who had treated him with genuine kindness in his final years. Helen Miller, the letter said in his shaky handwriting, was the only one who saw me as a human being, not as a burden. I leave this to her because I know she will use it better than I ever could. The money had been waiting for me for over 2 decades, growing with interest and investments managed by the bank, while I worked until my hands were raw, believing I was poor. The irony is as bitter as it is sweet. Lucy stole my house thinking it was the only valuable thing I had. never knowing there were millions waiting for me in an account I didn't even know existed. She had tried to scam me for pennies while I was a millionaire. I finish breakfast and head to my home office, the room that used to be Lucy's bedroom and which I've now turned into my personal sanctuary. The walls are decorated with photos of my grandsons, but also with new pictures. Me on the Mediterranean cruise I took by myself last month. Me in the painting class I now attend on Tuesdays. Me with Carol and the other women from the support group we formed for widows and divorcees. On the solid wood desk I bought myself, another luxury I had denied myself for decades, is the day's mail. A letter from the foundation I created for older women who are victims of family abuse. We've already helped 14 women leave situations similar to mine, providing them with legal, psychological, and financial assistance to start over. There's also a postcard from Paris sent by Carmen Ruiz, a 60-year-old woman who escaped her children's home after they treated her like a free maid for years. She now lives in her own apartment in Montmartre and is studying French. "Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to live," the postcard reads. "These stories fill me more than any fake hug I received for 40 years. The phone rings. It's Mr. Goldstein. "Helen, I have some news. Lucy has been released on parole. My daughter's name no longer feels like a punch to the gut. It's like hearing the name of a distant acquaintance. And she's requested a meeting with you. She wants to talk. After 6 months? Now she wants to talk? She says she's been in therapy, that she's reflected on her mistakes." I laugh softly. It's funny how people discover therapy and reflection right when they need something. Tell her no. "Are you sure?" "Completely. My daughter had 63 years of opportunities to treat me with respect. I don't need any more conversations with her. It's a decision I make without pain, without guilt, without that lump in my throat that was my companion for decades. I simply have no interest in revisiting a closed chapter of my life. After I hang up, I sit in the armchair by the window where I can see the backyard. I've planted jasmine, geraniums, and a small lemon tree that's already bearing fruit. The garden is small but perfect, just like my life now. Dylan arrives from school with Parker hanging off his backpack. They've grown so much in these few months. Dylan is already taller than me, and Parker is at that adorably awkward age where his voice cracks without warning. "Grandma, what's for dinner?" Parker asks as he pours himself a glass of milk. "Homemade lasagna and brownies for dessert." "Awesome!" they both shout in unison. It's funny. For years I cooked elaborate dishes for Lucy, desperately seeking her approval. My grandsons are happy with lasagna and hug me as if I've given them the world. While they do their homework, I prepare dinner, listening to the radio. The host is reading letters from listeners, and one catches my attention. "Dear Diane, I'm 70 years old, and I just left my son's house after 5 years of being his free babysitter. I feel guilty for being so selfish. Is it wrong to want to live my own life at this age?" I pick up the phone and dial the station's number. When they put me on the air, I say, "Diane, this is Helen, from Philly. I want to tell that listener that there is nothing selfish about loving yourself, that self-love isn't a luxury, it's a necessity, and that it is never, ever too late to truly start living." I talk for 5 minutes about my experience, about how I learned that giving love doesn't mean erasing yourself, about the difference between being needed and being respected. When I hang up, Dylan and Parker are looking at me with pride. "Grandma, you're famous," Parker says, smiling. "No, my love, I'm free, which is much better." That night, after tucking the boys in, I pour myself a glass of red wine and sit on the balcony. The stars are shining over Philadelphia, and I make a toast to the woman I was, who suffered so much, and to the woman I am now, who learned to fly. Tomorrow, I'm flying to Chicago to give a talk at a women's center. Next week, I'll go to Boston to visit another one of my women, as I affectionately call those we've helped through the foundation. And next month, Dylan, Parker, and I are going to Hawaii for 2 weeks because I promised them if they got good grades. My schedule is full, but with things I choose. My house is mine, my money is mine, my time is mine, my love is mine to give to those who deserve it. Lucy can keep her therapy and her reflections. I'll keep my freedom. Before I go to bed, I look at myself one last time in the bathroom mirror. The woman I see is 64 years old, with silver hair I no longer dye because I like it this way, wrinkles that tell the story of a full life, and eyes that shine with the satisfaction of someone who finally found herself. Good night, Helen, I say to my reflection. Tomorrow will be another beautiful day, and that's a promise I know I can keep. Because for the first time in my life, my happiness depends only on me, and that feels like the greatest miracle in the world. Have you lived through something similar to what I've told you? Do you know someone who has been in a similar situation? Tell me about it in the comments. And if this story has touched your heart, leave me a like and subscribe to the channel. You never know when someone you know might need to hear these words.